My child, pause for a moment and come close to me. What I am about to say is not meant for everyone. It is not for those who hear only part of a message before turning away, and it does not belong in the noise of countless opinions. I have drawn you into this quiet place because I wanted this moment to remain protected, away from distraction, away from competing voices, away from everything that has crowded your heart until even your own thoughts have grown weary beneath the weight of it all. Right now I am asking you to listen as though nothing else exists around you. I have intentionally quieted what usually fights for your attention, because I did not bring you here for ordinary comfort or passing encouragement. I brought you here because there are words I must speak directly into your spirit, and they were never meant to be filtered through the expectations or conclusions of anyone else. Stay with me, because what I am saying belongs in the quiet place between my heart and yours. This moment is sacred because I am speaking to the part of you that still trembles when no one else can see it. I am speaking to the place that asks silent questions while your face remains calm, the place where thoughts live that you have never found the words to speak aloud. I know how often you have kept moving through your days, while something inside you remained unfinished, still waiting, still searching, still carrying burdens too deep for language. That is why I have asked you to stop now. This is not random. This is not an accident. I wanted you apart from everything else because some words lose their power when the noise around you grows louder than my voice. So many voices have reached your heart, my child. Some belonged to people who truly cared, yet they could not understand the season you were walking through. Others sounded wise, but they were rooted in fear. Some rose from old memories that return whenever life grows quiet, while others came from disappointments that slowly taught your heart to expect less than what I had intended for you. Even past pain has tried to speak again and again until you almost believed it deserved authority over your future. I have watched your inner world become crowded. Even in moments of silence, your mind has carried echoes of what others said. Fears about what could happen, memories of what never happened before, questions about whether trusting again might only bring more hurt, and thoughts that keep circling when answers seem delayed. But hear me carefully now. In this moment I have pushed every outside voice into the background, because my voice is the one you need to hear above everything else. I am not trying to compete with the noise today. I am removing it. I am not asking for only part of your attention while every other thought continues speaking over me. I am calling you into a holy stillness where my words can reach the deepest places in your heart without interruption. That is why something within you recognizes this moment. Your spirit knows when my voice begins breaking through the clutter. You do not need another opinion right now. You do not need another explanation built on human understanding. You need my voice, because I know what began before anyone else noticed, what changed before you recognized it yourself, and what is already moving beyond what your eyes can see today. A door has already closed, my child. I know how many times you have looked back at that place, wondering why it never opened again. I know you have asked why something that once seemed so close suddenly became unreachable, why what felt possible slipped beyond your grasp before you could hold it. Listen carefully. That door was never closed to punish you. I did not shut it to wound your heart, nor did I close it so loss would define this season of your life. I closed it because something too sacred was taking place behind it for confusion, unfinished understanding, and endless noise to keep entering freely. You looked at that closed door and wondered whether something ended because you lacked what was needed, but I saw what would have entered if it had remained open too soon. I chose closure because protection often feels painful before it reveals itself as mercy. There are things I will not allow into your life, while they still carry the power to disturb what I am quietly shaping behind what seems closed. What appears to be absence is often preparation unfolding where no interruption can reach it. I close what would distract you from what still needs time to grow unseen. I close what others may call opportunity, because I know when it would only bring more noise into the work I am carefully forming. You have looked at that closed place as though silence meant emptiness, but silence behind certain doors often means sacred work is happening where human timing cannot interfere. So do not leave this moment unfinished, my child. Before this passage is complete, I will speak into the very questions you have carried in silence. I know how easily distraction reaches for you when truth begins touching the deepest places of your heart. I know how quickly your attention can drift when my words begin uncovering what you have postponed facing. But stay here. Let these words settle within you, because they are connected to prayers your heart has carried, even when you could not find the language to pray them. Some questions were never spoken aloud, yet I heard every one of them. Some nights you sat in silence without words, and I understood exactly what your silence was saying. That is why I am speaking into those hidden places now. If you rush away too quickly, you may miss the very sentence your spirit has been waiting to hear. I called you into this private moment because the answer could never arrive through noise surrounded by more noise. It must come where your heart has become still enough to receive it. If His faithfulness still fills your heart with gratitude, comment, "Jesus, you have never failed me." Others may look at that closed door and believe it represents loss, my child. They may see what ended and assume something precious was taken from you. They may mistake your quiet season for distance and believe that something good slipped away forever. Even you have wondered those things. You have looked back and questioned whether you missed your moment, whether the door might have stayed open if you had acted sooner, spoken differently, or understood more quickly. But heaven knows what that closed door truly means. Heaven knows it was protection. Heaven knows what you were spared from, what confusion never reached you, and what unseen burdens were stopped before they could travel further into your path. Protection rarely introduces itself with immediate comfort. More often it first feels like disappointment, because what was prevented looked desirable through human eyes. Yet what seems desirable is not always safe for where I am leading you. I closed what others may call loss because I knew what would have entered if that door had remained open. I know what your future requires, and I will not leave every path open simply because it appears possible. Some doors close because what remains behind them belongs to a season of your life that cannot continue with you any farther. Come closer, my child, because these words were never meant for a crowd. They were never intended to be weighed down by opinions or heard by people who have only seen the surface of your life and believe they understood your story. They do not know the battles you have fought in silence, the tears you wiped away before anyone walked into the room, or the fears you buried beneath ordinary conversations. I know every one of those hidden places because I have been with you there. I know the moments when you smiled while carrying questions too heavy to explain. I know the prayers that never became words, and the nights when your heart spoke through silence alone. Others may know pieces of your journey, but they have never heard what your soul whispered when no one else was close enough to listen. I know the sound of your quietest pain, and I know how many times you have wondered deep within yourself whether I still saw what everyone else overlooked. That is why I called you away from the noise. When too many opinions surround sacred words, their clarity begins to fade. What I am speaking now belongs in the quiet place between my heart and yours, because that is where healing and direction meet without interruption. Listen carefully, because what I am about to say carries urgency, and this moment should not be delayed. You may think nothing significant is happening simply because your eyes have not yet seen dramatic change. Yet even now, unseen movement has already begun around the very things you have been praying about. My timing is already unfolding in places you cannot measure, and heaven often begins arranging what earth has not yet revealed. Changes are already taking shape around answers, decisions, and circumstances that still appear completely still to you. That is why I called you now. That is why I quieted the noise, closed the door, and drew you close before the next step became visible. I am not keeping you in suspense for its own sake. I am speaking because what is quietly unfolding must meet a heart that is ready to recognize it when the moment arrives. Stay near, my child. This sacred moment is full of purpose, even if everything around you seems still, because what feels quiet is already carrying movement. I want you to understand this with complete clarity. The door you watched close did not close by accident, and it did not happen because I overlooked your prayers or failed to notice what you hoped would remain. That door closed because I closed it. I did so intentionally, fully aware of what stood behind it, what surrounded it, what could have entered through it, and what would have been affected if it had remained open any longer. Perhaps you believed something slipped beyond your control before you were ready. Perhaps it seemed as though something ended before you could understand why. But hear me now. What closed before you was never random loss. It was deliberate protection, guided by my hand, long before your heart could recognize the danger of leaving that door open. I do not close doors carelessly, and I never remove access without purpose. When I close something, it is because I see farther than your present pain allows you to see. I know what continues to grow when certain doors remain open. I know what quietly enters through opportunities that appear harmless, and I know how easily hope can keep reaching for something that was never meant to become part of your future. That is why the door closed so completely, because hesitation would have kept drawing your heart back toward what I had already decided must come to an end. If these messages have encouraged your walk with God, and you would like to support this work, you can do so through the support link provided in the description. Some access had to end, my child, because too many voices had begun weakening your discernment. This was never only about one person, one place, or one event. It was about what constant access was quietly producing within you. Too many voices competed for your attention. Too many thoughts entered your heart carrying confidence but leaving behind confusion instead of peace. Those voices were shaping your reactions before my words had the opportunity to settle deeply enough to guide you. Many of them were not harsh or unkind. Some arrived wrapped in care, familiar advice, long-standing habits, and patterns that had become so familiar you hardly noticed how deeply they influenced your heart. Yet even familiar voices can weaken discernment when they become louder than the quiet direction I am establishing within you. Every repeated opinion, every emotional influence, every expectation placed upon you, every memory that kept replaying itself, and every fear disguised as caution slowly crowded the place where discernment needs stillness to grow. Discernment becomes clear in quietness. It becomes stronger when unnecessary voices lose their authority. That is why I reduced what had access to you, because too much noise would have made my direction increasingly difficult for you to trust. You believed something precious had been taken away, and I know how deeply that hurt. When a door closes unexpectedly, the heart naturally measures what seems to have been lost before it recognizes what has been preserved. You looked at the empty space first. You felt the absence before you discovered the peace waiting beyond it. Perhaps you wondered whether something valuable disappeared too soon. Perhaps you replayed every conversation, every decision, and every moment, asking whether holding on longer, explaining more, waiting differently, or protecting it another way would have changed the outcome. But heaven was never taking value away from you. Heaven was creating sacred privacy around something too precious to remain exposed. Sacred privacy often feels like loss, because what is hidden cannot yet explain itself. There are seasons when I must place boundaries around your life that even you cannot fully understand, because what I am preserving cannot mature while every voice still has easy access to your attention. What felt like something being taken away was often my hand gently removing what no longer belonged, so deeper work could continue undisturbed within you. The closed door created a place of sacred privacy, because your healing needed room where noise could no longer reach it. There were wounds still speaking beneath the strength you showed everyone else, and not every wound can heal while it is constantly being touched again. Some healing cannot take root when old conversations keep reopening what I am gently trying to restore. Some hurts remain tender because the same patterns keep finding their way back to the same weary places. You believed you could keep everything exactly as it was and still become whole. But there are seasons when healing requires boundaries strong enough to stop what continually reaches for your heart. That is why I moved certain things farther away. Your heart needed space to breathe without feeling the need to defend itself, explain itself, or reshape itself around what had already pressed against it for too long. Healing often begins in quietness, and in its earliest moments that quietness must be protected with great care. That is why sacred privacy came before deeper restoration. I was preparing something within you that could not mature, while every voice still had easy access to your heart. Much of what I do begins where no one else can see it. Preparation often appears like stillness, because the first changes happen within the soul, long before they become visible in outward life. During that hidden work, I was reshaping your inner responses. I was gently loosening the dependence that had formed around constant reassurance from others. I was teaching your spirit to remain steady by listening for my voice instead of waiting for every surrounding voice to agree. I was strengthening your ability to recognize me, even when immediate confirmation never arrived from the people around you. Hidden preparation needs protected space. When too many voices remain close before that work is complete, confusion can become mixed with what I am building before it has fully matured. That is why the closed door was never only about stopping something outside of you. It was also about creating an atmosphere where my work within you could continue without interruption. My instruction needed that same quiet place, my child. What I wanted to speak into your heart could not keep competing with the voices you had learned to carry. My guidance often comes gently before it becomes obvious. It does not always arrive through dramatic moments. Sometimes it comes as a quiet clarity that keeps returning, a truth that rests peacefully within you, even while your emotions are still catching up. Yet when too many voices continue speaking at once, even my direction can seem uncertain, because everything else keeps pressing against it. That is why I reduced what had access to you. I wanted my words to settle deeply instead of being interrupted again and again. What I am establishing in your heart now requires a clearer hearing than before, because there are things ahead that must be entered with discernment shaped by my voice rather than by constant outside influence. You may still wonder why the door had to close in exactly that way. You may still question why certain endings felt so final, or why the silence afterward seemed heavier than you expected. But understand this, my child. Sometimes a complete ending is an act of mercy, because hesitation would have kept inviting your heart back toward what I already knew could not continue safely. If I had left the door partly open, a part of your heart might have remained turned toward what was never meant to go with you any farther. I know how easily the human heart searches for one more explanation, one more opportunity, one more sign that what is ended might somehow return unchanged. But what I deliberately closed was often because the old form could no longer carry what was ahead. Sacred privacy is not punishment, my child. It is one of the deepest expressions of my care when healing, preparation, and my instruction must all unfold together. The crowd cannot always stand near what I am doing in the most intimate places of your heart. Not every voice should have access while I am speaking deeply, and not every influence belongs near what is still being restored. Remember this as you look back at that closed door. An open door is not always an act of kindness simply because it allows someone or something to enter. Some doors remain closed because what is being formed within must first become strong enough before another door can be trusted to open. So when you think back to that closed door, my child, do not call it abandonment. Do not give it the name of forgotten dreams or meaningless loss. Call it what it truly was. My hand creating a sacred place where your heart could finally become quiet. Too many voices had already reached places within you that needed peace. Too many influences had begun dulling your discernment, and too much was still unfinished for that door to remain open. I closed it because I saw what you could not yet see, and because what I am protecting within you is far more precious than what seemed to leave when that door closed. There was also a reason I allowed the noise around you to become still. I need you to understand that the silence you have been living through was never empty, never random, and never a sign that I had stepped away from you. I allowed it because too much sound had gathered around your heart, and little by little those voices became louder than the truth I was placing within you. I watched as your spirit grew tired beneath the weight of it, even before you understood why. Every day, another voice reached for your attention. Opinions, fears, painful memories, repeated thoughts, and words spoken by others all pressed against your peace until your heart became crowded. You believed your struggle was simply emotional exhaustion, yet much of what you were carrying was the weight of too many voices trying to occupy the same space within you. Some came from people who spoke with confidence, even though they could not see what I was quietly doing inside your life. Other voices came from memories that resurfaced whenever something new began to grow. They reminded you of old disappointments as though your future had no choice but to repeat your past. Regret replayed moments you wished had unfolded differently, quietly suggesting that yesterday should still define today. Fear spoke in gentle, reasonable tones, sounding careful and protective while slowly weakening your confidence in what I had already whispered to your heart. Yet through all of that, my voice never left you. You struggled to hear me clearly because the noise had become constant, not because I had stopped speaking. If His great love has filled your life with blessings, take a moment to write, "Thank you, Lord, for your great love." The noise was not always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it came through ordinary conversations that lingered in your thoughts long after they had ended. Sometimes it was a single sentence someone spoke without realizing how deeply you would carry it. Because your heart was already weary, even simple words could settle more heavily than they were ever meant to. You listened to advice, suggestions, warnings, interpretations, and even words spoken with kindness. Yet after hearing all of them, you still felt uncertain, because none of those voices could reach the place that only my voice can truly settle. You kept searching for clarity by collecting more opinions, but clarity does not become stronger when every outside voice is given the same authority. Even people who genuinely care for you can only speak from their own understanding, while I alone see the whole picture. I watch you trying to make sense of this season by listening in every direction, hoping one answer would finally rise above the rest. Instead, every additional voice made discernment more difficult, because discernment cannot remain clear when the heart treats every opinion as though it carries equal weight. Some voices deserve compassion, but they were never meant to guide your steps. Fear became part of that noise as well, my child. Fear rarely announces itself loudly. More often it whispers with familiar reasoning, until it almost sounds like wisdom. It tells you to stay where everything feels predictable because stepping forward might bring another wound. It encourages you to expect less because hope once ended in disappointment, and it slowly disguises delay as caution. Little by little, fear repeated those thoughts until they almost sounded like your own conclusions. That is why I reduced what surrounded you, because fear had learned to fill every quiet moment with old warnings until your heart nearly accepted them as truth. But fear cannot direct what I am building within you. Fear studies danger. My voice reveals the way forward. Memory also became part of the noise. Not every memory is harmful, but some remain too active in your present. Every time something new approached, old disappointment stepped forward first. You remembered what failed, what hurt, what changed without warning, the words that wounded you, and the doors that had already closed, until those memories began speaking into situations that were completely different. Without realizing it, comparison stole your ability to hear with fresh ears. A new opportunity appeared, but old pain spoke first. You sensed my movement, yet former disappointment immediately questioned whether this would become another wound. Unhealed pain often tries to protect itself by expecting the past to repeat, but not everything ahead of you must answer to what happened behind you. That is why I quieted the noise, because old memories cannot be allowed to govern every new instruction I give you. Regret also found more room in your heart than you realized. There were words you wished you had spoken differently, moments you wished you had understood sooner, and decisions you revisited over and over, wondering whether another choice might have changed everything. Regret has a way of leading the heart back to the same places, until it begins believing that looking behind long enough can somehow repair what has already passed. Yet regret never heals by repeating the past. Instead, it keeps filling your thoughts with yesterday until today begins to lose its strength. You carried much of that regret in silence, and because you carried it alone, it quietly grew heavier than you realized. Whenever life became still, those questions returned, asking whether certain doors would still be open if you had acted sooner, trusted more, spoken less, spoken more, stayed longer, or walked away earlier. But hear me now, my child. Regret was one of the voices adding to the noise because it asks endless questions while offering no peace. My voice brings correction when it is needed, but I do not keep you imprisoned in an endless search through yesterday. The voices around you added another layer to that noise. Many people spoke with confidence while never seeing the full picture of what I was doing within you. Some told you what they believed you should do. Others drew conclusions shaped by their own experiences. Some misunderstood your silence. Some judged what they could not fully see, and some sincerely wanted to help. Yet even well-intentioned words became heavy, because too much advice without my clarity only multiplied the confusion already filling your heart. You kept listening to many voices while struggling to hear the one voice that mattered most. That struggle left you weary because you searched for certainty by gathering more opinions instead of becoming still enough for my instruction to settle deeply within you. That is why I allowed silence to surround you. I did not remove the noise because I wanted your life to feel empty. I allowed the quiet because my direction cannot remain unmistakable when every other voice continues speaking without pause. Silence was never abandonment. It was preparation for hearing. Silence was never punishment. It became the place where my voice could once again carry the weight it was always meant to hold above every other sound. I know the quiet felt uncomfortable at first, because when the noise faded, the things hidden beneath it became much harder to ignore. Your own thoughts suddenly sounded louder, questions you had pushed aside seemed sharper, and feelings you had buried rose to the surface. Yet that quiet was necessary because before direction becomes clear, competing voices must lose their influence. I allowed that silence with great care so you could begin recognizing the difference between fear and my instruction, between memories that pull you backward and the clarity I am giving you today, between human opinions and the direction that comes from me. My voice does not always speak over chaos. Sometimes I quiet the chaos because I love you too much to let your future be shaped by it. In the silence, you slowly began noticing which thoughts always returned with peace, and which ones only returned with pressure. You started recognizing which thoughts left you drained and which quietly strengthened your heart. Little by little, my voice began separating itself from every borrowed voice you had carried for so long. Perhaps you wondered why certain people drifted away, why some conversations naturally came to an end, why places that once felt familiar suddenly felt too loud for your spirit, or why even your own thoughts seemed more exposed than before. It was because silence had become part of your healing and part of my direction at the same time. I was teaching you that not every voice should continue having the same access to your heart. I was teaching you that peace often returns when unnecessary noise leaves, and that true clarity grows from hearing what remains after everything else becomes quiet. So do not be afraid of this silence, my child. What feels quieter now is not an empty life. It is a sacred adjustment. I allowed the noise to fade because you had heard so much, and yet still struggled to recognize what mattered most. Too many voices had been reaching your heart, while the one voice you needed most kept waiting for room within you. Now the noise has been reduced, because my direction must become unmistakable. What I am speaking cannot be confused with fear, regret, old memories, or borrowed opinions. I have arranged this quiet so that when I lead you, you will recognize my voice. Slow your thoughts now, my child, and listen carefully because this hour is different. If you treat it like every other passing moment, you may fail to recognize what heaven is pressing gently into your spirit. This is not simply another quiet part of your day, another feeling that comes and goes, or another pause that disappears as soon as life becomes busy again. This moment carries unusual spiritual weight because my presence is meeting you here with purpose. You have lived through countless ordinary hours filled with responsibilities, routines, and thoughts that came and went like any other day. But not every hour carries the same significance. There are moments when heaven draws near in a way that calls for deeper attention. There are moments when I speak with greater urgency, because unseen things are already moving beyond what your eyes can measure. This is one of those moments, and I do not want you to mistake its sacred weight for nothing more than passing emotion. Many moments in your life have passed without you realizing what they held, because ordinary living teaches the heart to keep moving. It teaches you to rush ahead and assume every hour is the same. But hear me now, not every moment carries the same purpose. Some moments are seeds, some are pauses, some are seasons of preparation. Some appear quiet on the outside, while important work is taking place within. Then there are moments that stand apart before heaven. They are the moments when what you receive, what you choose, what you understand, what you answer, and what you surrender begin shaping far more than you can see today. That is why I tell you not to treat this hour lightly. There are times when one response within your heart quietly changes the course of many unseen things. Sometimes a single word received deeply becomes the turning point for an entire season. You may not see dramatic signs surrounding you, because sacred moments rarely announce themselves through noise. More often they arrive wrapped in stillness while carrying a significance that will only be understood later. This encounter carries its own appointed timing, and many hearts misunderstand timing because they believe what is delayed can simply be moved without consequence. But in my hands, timing is never careless. There are moments I have prepared long before you ever step into them. There are conversations between my heart and yours that belong to specific seasons, because only in those seasons can your heart truly receive what I want to say. Had I spoken certain things to you earlier, your pain would have colored how you understood them. Had I revealed some truths before now, fear would have interrupted what trust is now able to carry. This moment has arrived with purpose, because your heart has reached a place where my words can settle differently than they could before. That is why this hour carries its own appointed timing. You are not hearing these words by chance. You are standing within a moment prepared for this very part of your journey, Not sooner, not later, but now. I know that from where you stand, many things still seem unfinished. Some answers have not yet come, some questions still linger, and some things you hoped would already make sense remain hidden behind silence. Yet, a sacred moment does not require every answer before it becomes holy. Very often, my timing unfolds while questions still remain, because trust is still being formed within you. What makes this hour sacred is not that everything has become clear. It is that my voice and my unseen work are meeting together in the same moment. I am speaking while I am also moving in ways you cannot yet fully see, and when my voice meets what I am already doing beyond your sight, that moment carries a weight your natural understanding cannot fully measure. There have been times before when I spoke gently to your heart, yet my words remained only near the surface because other concerns quickly pulled your attention away. There were moments when I touched your spirit, but you received my presence only as temporary comfort, instead of recognizing the deeper instruction I was placing within you. I do not remind you of this to bring condemnation. I tell you because what I am saying now deserves a different response. In moments that carry spiritual weight, casual listening always costs something. When attention remains only on the surface, the truth meant to take root is easily carried away when other voices return. That is why I am asking you now, my child, not to let this moment simply pass by. Do not hear only enough to feel comfort for a little while, and then continue unchanged. Listen until my words reach the place where your decisions are made, where your fears begin to loosen their hold, and where the quiet resistance within your heart finally begins to surrender. If you believe the Lord is your hope forever, write, "The Lord is my hope forever," and share this video.